In this video, we're going to go through how to perform a recruitment search. So that's a search where you do have an IRB approved study and an IRB approved contact message, and you're ready to contact potential volunteers. All right, so here we're going to start searching and we're going to choose our search. So we're ready to contact volunteers, so we're going to select recruitment. Then we are going to choose our study. All right, so I'm choosing my IRB research match, the study that we just added. You select what language your IRB approved message is written in. If your study does have an IRB approved message in Spanish and your study can recruit, enroll, and retain participants in Spanish, you can select Spanish because there are some volunteers who've indicated that they want to be contacted in Spanish because they are either Spanish speaking or bilingual. Then you'll be asked if your study focuses on children, parenting, or pregnancy, and this is because we have some volunteers who've indicated they want specifically to hear about these studies, and others who've indicated that they would prefer not to hear about studies on these topics. So in order to help you get the best match of folks who are most likely to be interested in your study, we ask this question. For our example, let's say no. Then you'll move on to the location filters. So here again, you can add as many or as few of these as you'd like, but if you have an in-clinic study, it's really important that you're using that location filter so that you can filter from your location, because if folks are having to travel in, you don't want to be contacting people that live too far away to make that trip. But for our example, let's not use a location filter. All right, then you can move on to the demographic filters. One of the really important ones here is age. So here you will want to add 18 if you're recruiting adults. We do have some individuals who are pediatric volunteers who've been registered by their guardians. So your studies for adults, you'll want to include 18 there. And then you can include a max age. If your study has a cutoff, for example, if you have a cutoff of 40 or 50 for your study, it's important that you're including that age because this is a really easy way to exclude volunteers who clearly are not a good fit for your study. Then you have these other demographic filters, and you can add as many or as few of these as you'd like. Then you can move on to the health conditions filter. So this filter does use Boolean logic. And if you're not super familiar with that, I would recommend taking a look at the instructions before you actually get into using this filter. But we're going to run through an example. So for us, let's say we're specifically looking for volunteers who've had a stroke. We're going to add that. And as I'm adding these, you're going to see this yellow, see that number just decreased because we've added a health condition and a specific one. So we're also going to add hypertension here because we are looking for folks who have had a stroke, but who also have hypertension. All right. So you can see that number did decrease, but we still have a good number of volunteers here who would qualify based on these health conditions. Let's say we want to open this up a little bit, and we're also looking for people who have heart disease. And what you're seeing here are just examples of other medical terms that are related. So you could add, again, as many or as few of these as you'd like. Just because you see something listed here doesn't mean a volunteer necessarily has indicated they have that. This is pulling from a common list of medical terms. So that's why you're seeing a lot of alternate definitions or synonyms for medical conditions. But let's add those three. So that number went from 162 up to 465. And this is the power of the health conditions filter. So I love to look at this little gray box down here at the bottom because I think it lays out very easily who you're contacting. So right now we are including volunteers who either have stroke, heart diseases, or coronary artery disease, but all of these people have hypertension. Let's say we specifically need to exclude people who've had a traumatic brain injury. We can add that to our exclude set. And I'm a really big fan of the exclude set because, again, I feel like that's a really easy way to remove volunteers from your cohort who are clearly not a good match for your study. Because if you have clear exclusion criteria, which most studies do, you can add those here and go ahead and filter out those people who aren't going to be a good match for this particular study. All right, so we still have 463 people who may be a good match based on our filters that we've added. The medications filter works in very much the same way, but in our example, we're going to not add any medication filters. A question I get a lot is, what if I have an intervention group, so a group maybe that has to have certain medical conditions, but you also have a control group where you're recruiting healthy volunteers. How do you do that within Research Match? So how you would do that is that you would perform two separate searches. So for example, the search we're doing right now would be for that group that needs medical conditions. If you needed to also contact healthy volunteers about your study, you would come back into the system, go through this filter again, and remove all these medical conditions and check healthy volunteers, that you only wanted to contact healthy volunteers. You can perform as many searches as you'd like for your study and contact different cohorts of people. So again, maybe your study has 4 conditions and you need to look for really specific groups of people. You're going to be doing 4 searches with each of those filtering criteria laid out using this search tool. All right, so down here at the bottom, you can save your search. I find that if I have a really high number of people, so if, for example, this came up with 6,000 people who fit my eligibility criteria, I would want to save my search. Research Match is only going to let you contact 1,500 volunteers at a time. And that's for 2 reasons. One, so that you're sure that you can handle a potential influx of volunteers, but also secondarily, so that the Research Match system is able to keep up with all of those emails that are needing to go out. So you can save your search. Again, I highly recommend it, especially if you've added a number of health conditions to this health condition filter. But if you'd rather not, you can also move on and just select your volunteers. So let's select without saving. All right, so here you're going to be able to see the de-identified information about these volunteers. You can see state, age, BMI, race, and gender. You'll also be able to see the other demographic information about them from the filtering criteria. So things like if they are a twin or a triplet, if they report smoking, and if they're a veteran. A question I get all the time is, can I contact the same volunteer more than once? And the answer to that is that there's only one condition in which a potential volunteer could be contacted more than once. And that is if you contact someone and they do not reply to that initial message. So they don't see it or they just don't respond. Initially, they are removed from your volunteer pool for 4 months. So let's say this 58-year-old woman from Minnesota, we contact her. For the next 4 months, she's not going to be in our pool of eligible volunteers. But then 5 months pass, and I come back into the system and perform the same search. Assuming she did not respond to my initial message, she will be re-entered into my pool of eligible volunteers, and I could recontact her about my study. You also have the option to randomly select a number of volunteers. So let's say we want to randomly select 100 people. And I do really recommend this, especially if you get a large number of people. Then you will move down here and enter your IRB approved contact message. And finally, you can enter your REDCap URL. So this is if you have a REDCap pre-screening survey, if your study uses various methods, or if you have a survey study, you can also include your REDCap survey. Again, you can use Qualtrics, you just won't be able to have it sent out automatically. I will say that in general, I don't recommend that you send your actual survey, if you have a survey study, out using this mechanism. I recommend that you use a screening survey or a pre-screening survey, just again to determine eligibility. All right, you can also create an auto contact rule. What this will do is contact any new volunteers who join the system who meet the filtering criteria that you set up for 30 days. So this is especially helpful if you have, for example, a rare disease and you don't want to come into the system every 30 days or every month to check to see if there are any new volunteers. You can create an auto contact rule and have that automatically contact volunteers. Now, I will say that this is only available for studies that are using various methods. If you do have a survey study, you won't be able to set up an auto contact rule. All right, then down here at the bottom, you're going to certify that you're entering only IRB approved recruitment language and that you are excluding URLs and direct study contact information. You'll then want to click preview message. So this is what volunteers will actually get in their inbox. So this is standard template text. Your institution's name will be here. You will then see your IRB approved contact message. This is where your language goes. If volunteers are interested in your study, they'll click yes, I'm interested, and their contact information is released to you. If they're not, they'll click no thanks, and their contact information will not be released to you, and you would not be able to contact them again about your study. Then you'll want to come down here, and when you click send message, that message is going to go out to those volunteers. If you do have questions as you are getting started with Research Match, please always feel free to contact us at info@researchmatch.org or get in touch with your institutional liaison.